Come on, Year 11, thank you very much for coming in on time. Today's assembly is probably the most important one that I ever do. I always do one at the end of September, beginning of October, to kind of give you a time frame, a roadmap for what the year ahead's going to look like, to get you to switch on now for the end that's coming, okay? And crucially, we're now into 3 blocks of time that are really important in your lives at Manor. They're actually blocks of 9, 8, and 7 weeks. The first 9 weeks takes us up to just before Christmas, and it takes us to the end of our mock exam period. The following 8 then take us to the end of the March mock periods, and then the 7 weeks after that take you to the start of the GCSEs in May. So that's all the teaching time we've got left. 9, 8, 7. Think of it in blocks of time of those. And I'm going to be honest, this is the most difficult assembly I ever have to deliver. Because ideally, I wouldn't be delivering it to 240 people. I would be delivering it to one person at a time, to tell you individually about what you need to do, as opposed to a group of people. Because there'll be some people in here today whereby this is really relevant. This is something that's going to kind of hopefully change your outlook over the next 7, 8, 9 weeks. There's some people, when I'm talking a little bit about revision, where you're actually doing a little bit too much, you need to bring it back down. It's really difficult for me to gauge. So I just need you to sit here and listen and be sensible and take the things from it that most are going to affect you. Okay? So, the thing I often hear most at this time of year, often with my mentees when I sit down with them, is this phrase: "Sir, I just can't revise, it won't stick in my head." Okay? Hear it all the time. And so this year, what we've decided to design for you is a curriculum, a timetable, whereby you've got 1 hour a week on your timetable for study support and study skills lessons. So we can try and teach you and help you with understanding how to create a revision timetable, how to create mind maps, how to interleave your subjects so you can try and make your revision time most efficient. Okay? That's what I hear the most. And my response is always yet. Okay? Always, always yet, because that is a growth mindset. What that involves as a growth mindset is you won't be able to do it just yet. The first time you do something, you will be rubbish at it. When you get to 17 or 18 or 19, you first learn how to drive, everyone will be rubbish at it. It is just a flat thing that always happens. You're rubbish at it. And the next time you get into the car after your first driving lesson, you feel rubbish again. You're like, well, I'm never going to learn to drive, because you're fixated on the end point of being independent, passing your driving test and being able to drive a car. And what you don't appreciate is the forgetting parts of learning that we have to do in order to remember stuff. When we learn, what happens is we remember it instantly, remember it there and then. But then over time, what happens is your brain decays it, your brain forgets it, and that's normal. That's part of learning, because your brain can only hold so many things in its head at any one time. It has to prioritize what's most important. So we have to, when we look at our revision, we have to look at trying to get this revision into our long-term memory, so it's in our memory bank, so we can call on it in Med. And what is really crucial when we do any type of revision is we always go back to something and we repeat it. And it feels like you're not learning anything new. It feels like you're doing the same thing over again. It's not going in. But it actually is. What happens the first time you learn something, your rate of decay, your rate of forgetting stuff is quite a lot. You forget something that you did yesterday. If I ask those of you who did maths yesterday what you learned yesterday, you'd have forgotten half of it already. That's why we try and have in school your 4 maths lessons, 1 per day. We try and spread out your lessons through the course of the week. It's the same thing with revision. When you come back to revise things, what happens is the rate of decay, the rate of forgetting slows down. Okay? It slows down, so it eventually goes into what's called your long-term memory. And I want to do something today that I've never done before, Year 11, so you're going to have to bear with me. Your brain's like a sieve. It's like a colander. What happens is when you stick information into it, what happens is it all comes flowing out the bottom. All right? That's the first time you learn something. What we've got to do is go back to it. Okay, we've got to put a filter paper in there, go back to it, and what happens is it still comes out the bottom, but it comes out at a slower rate. Every time we add a new filter paper in, every time we go back to revise something, the stuff that comes out of the bottom, the stuff that we forget, is less and less and less. And I'm actually really proud that I managed to do a science experiment, because every time I do a science experiment in my life, I've either ended up in hospital, sticking something in my eye I shouldn't have done, or burning someone's hair. So I'm really quite glad that hasn't gone terribly. I'm coming back to it in a minute though. Okay? That's crucial. You must keep going back even though you feel that it's not going in. Okay? Now, the next important thing I need to use is 2 people from last year. And I can't tell you their names, but these are the next big trap that I hear. Last year, there was a cohort, a small group of students that I would often hear this thing, which was, I only need X to get to college. I only need a 4 in English and Maths to get to college, to get to my level 3 course that I'm interested in. I want to do X at college, so I want to just do that. And I just want to focus on those 2 subjects. I just want to focus on my English and Maths, because I only need those 2. And actually, college have said I need 4 grade 4s to do this course. So I'm just going to focus on that and forget about everything else. So this is an actual student from last year. This is what their forecast grades were in this right-hand column in December. I'm going to call this person student A. Might be male, might be female, doesn't matter. But this is what they got. They sat down after their mocks and were like, ooh, they're quite good, that's what I need. I just need 4 grade 4s, including English and Maths, and I'm happy with them. I know my science is 3s, but I don't need them, because I'm just going to that next step. I'm just trying to get to college. What then happened was the next set of mocks and the forecast grades after that, there was some drop-off, because they subconsciously had decided to start to focus more on a couple of subjects and let the other ones go. So as you can see, food dropped off. As you can see, product design dropped off from a 4 as well. And at this point, the person had got an offer from college and was like, yeah, I just need 4 grade 4s, English and Maths. I've got a 4 minus in English language. Yeah, it's a 4, it's fine. It's fine. They kept on telling themselves, it's fine, it's fine. I've been through COVID, the government will look after me. We're going back to we're not going back to 2019 grade languages or out like that. We're going to get looked after. And what they did is they took their foot off the gas and they let things slide. And this is what they ended up with. Because they did that, they missed everything. That is a genuine person from last year, and I cannot tell you how unbelievably sad that made me feel handing out the results in this room about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Because what they've done is they just focused in on 2 subjects that they thought they needed and ended up missing the entire lot. And ended up kind of forgetting the thing that I taught them standing here on the 4th of October last year. And it made me really sad because I hadn't done my job. I'd failed him. Because I hadn't drilled into him how important it was of trying to keep everything going. And I'll explain why. This is a different person. This now is a different... Sorry, before I get to that point. This is what your result slips look like. This is what that person got. And this is the actual thing. I've kind of taken off the person's name and things like that. But it's what you actually get. There's no identifiers on there from what school you've been to. Everyone in the country gets something like this. You can't be identified from coming to Manor. It doesn't make you, and because you got those grades here, any different to someone from anywhere else in the country, because all those other identifiers are stripped bare and you end up with these things here. Okay? Compare that to somebody who sat in this room this point last year with the exact same prior attainment, went to the exact same primary school, and had this as their first set of forecasts in December. So there was a little bit of variation. You see, geography was a little bit higher at 5, but English language was a bit lower at 3, but it was kind of in and around that same area as the first person. What they decided to do was to listen to their teachers and to me and to try and keep all the plates spinning. And the reason why they wanted to try and do that is going to be my next experiment I'll show you in a second. As a result of the next set of mocks in March, there was an increase in geography to 6. The late English language stayed at a 3, but they went from a level 2 pass and child development up to a level 2 merit. Their science went up. They were gaining momentum. What was happening was they were seeing the fruits of their labour from having listened to me in October. They weren't expected by me to get everything right in November. But they put that into practice, they put the hard yards in, they'd gone back to the revision, gone back to it, and it was now, all the stuff was sinking into their long-term memory, and it was starting to bear fruit, and this is what that person then ended up with. A set of nearly 5s, a level 2 distinction on child development. On the right-hand side, you see the point score, okay? That basically means the equivalent in GCSE grade. So, for example, child development, a level 2 distinction is worth 7 points. It's the same as a grade 7. And all those grades have gone up from where that person started in November. And it brings me back, and I thought about this last night at our SLT meeting, it brings us back to our school values. What makes us different as a school? One of the key strap lines we have is growing together. And that comes from a Bible passage in Corinthians, where essentially, in the section, and I always get this wrong, so I do apologise to Mr. Rab, is that there's basically parts, if you're just one body, no one part of you is any more important than the other. It might be that your brain and your heart are really important because they pump the blood and organise things in your mind and everything else, but they're no good without a hand. They're no good without an actual body. They're no good without arms and legs. And that person there made me really think back to our school value of growing together. That person decided that no one thing was more important. Mr. Rab, can I borrow you? And this brings me back on to my next step showing of the experiment. Okay? Remember our sieve. Okay? You just stick stuff in there, and what happens is it comes flooding out the first time you do it. Go back to it, you're effectively putting in a filter paper, and it starts to come out but at a slower rate. If you also interleave your subjects, that means you still have your subjects. You're going for them all. You're not just going for one subject or two subjects. What happens, you see, the rate of stuff coming out of the top one into the bottom one to the next one is much slower. The rate of decay of you forgetting stuff is much, much slower. You will remember stuff more by making sure that you're trying to keep all those plates spinning. And it is really hard, because I have to do it in my job as a vice principal. And some days I think I'm going to break, because I can't do it. I can't do it. I go home, and one or two times, I'm not afraid to say it, I go home to see Lucy and Oliver, and I sometimes have a little bit of a, not solve that with the wrong word, but I feel a bit sad, because I feel like I haven't done my job properly, because I can't keep all these plates spinning. But the problem is you're not supposed to get things perfect. Okay? And that's what I keep telling myself as a vice principal. I'm not trying to get things perfect. If I'd got it perfectly right, that person, I'd been able to grab hold of them in the 4th of October, to be able to reach them and make sure they'd avoided that trap of just focusing on English and maths. Thank you ever so much, Mr. Rab. I haven't destroyed the world. That's the impact. That's what I want you to try and remember from today. An idiot at the front without a lab coat on, because I should be a proper scientist who can't do any science experiments, trying to hit that home for you. And some of you, it'll sink in. Some of you it'll take to March. And unfortunately, some of you will end up being like the first person described, where it just won't reach. I will try my best to try and help you reach that person. If you are that person, to try and help you understand that. But you've got to go on that journey yourself. So that is really important, okay? The idea comes down to this graph. If you aim at something, just one particular focus, and just focus on that, without realising it, what happens is you actually go into decline. That first person, where I'm just tipping the water straight in. Whereas if you are the person that's trying to do everything, trying to keep on top of things, feeling you're failing often, that is normal. What you are feeling is normal, it's right, and it's good. Because it breeds, most importantly, resilience and an inner strength inside of you that will last until you're 25, till you're 35, till well beyond the time that I'm long gone from this earth. Lots of us whether we're a geography teacher, physics teacher, maths teacher, we might not see the fruits of our labour until you're 35. You might often say to me, "Sir, why do I need geography? I don't need it for college." You might well need it for when you're 30, when you're doing something in life that you suddenly think, that's what Miss Clark was on about. Now I get why Mr. Hill was whittering on about that in French. Because these transferable skills will help you, and importantly, it's really, really crucial. So that's the why, and this is how I'd recommend you do it. The first thing is habits. Excellence, this is one of my favourite quotes, excellence is not an act, it's not a one-off. People often see at the end a grade 4, a grade 5, done something amazing, it's excellent, and they see it as a one-off act. It's not, it's a habit. It's lots of little things that eventually go back to this graph whereby they've accumulated over time. Lots of little things, day in, day out, they accumulate over time. So that's the first thing, getting ourselves into good habits. Okay? Now, when it comes to revision, habits are really important. Trying to find the same place, trying to do the same things, trying to avoid the illusion of competence, whereby you're writing stuff out. The first thing lots of you will do in this room will we want to write down on revision cards stuff that you've already learned. That's great. Happy days. But you've then got to try and test yourselves. Okay? We've given you a set lesson called Study Skills, which is solely aimed at trying to allow you time to work out which revision strategy works best for you. And there are lots of them. Okay? The first one we've got is trying to make it obvious when you're at home. And that's the first step, at home. You're not going to get your target grades or what you want out of this if you just rely on what you're taught in school. I'm sorry, but that's just a home truth I have to tell you. Just doing the work in school is not enough in year 11. It's not enough, I'm afraid. And the reason why it's not enough is because there's only a set number of grades out there. Because we're effectively competing against students from other schools for the same number of grades. And it's really harsh. It's really unfair, this exam system we've got in this country, but that's the way it is. So we've got to do this revision at home. Try and make sure you write down a plan. Try and make sure you try and interleave your habits. Maybe going for a walk as you're revising or listening to a podcast. Or maybe trying to start small. That's what I mean by being obvious. Try and make it fun. You might want to try and do it with a friend. You might want to get your parents involved. Mr. Escoll's videoing this so I can put this on YouTube for those people who aren't in here today to be able to view back, and for you to view back again if you ever wanted to, not that I really would, in your study skills lesson. And the thing is you might want your parents to view it so that you can then bribe them and say, what about if I get grade 5 in geography? What would you give me if I got that, Dad? And you'll be amazed what they'll give you. You'll be amazed what your parents will do. Because quite frankly, I'm going to give my daughter 20 quid for every particular grade she gets. Okay? Because quite frankly, I know she's motivated by money. I wasn't motivated by money when I was a young person. I was motivated by cricket, would you believe? And trying to get some particular cricket pads. But try and involve your parents to try and make it attractive to you. The other thing is try and make it easy. If you've got it written down in an exam timetable, then you have got something you've got to go back to. I have produced a revision timetable for everyone that I'm going to give to your study skills teachers that allows you to write things down in a timetable in the 4 weeks before the mock exam starts. Okay, Henry? This is really important, this bit. Each of those squares represents a subject with potentially a topic within it. The key thing is not to fill that timetable. Each square, I would say, represents about 30 minutes of revision time at this stage. Reason why it's 30 minutes is the majority of us in this room is 15 years old. You've got an attention span of double your age in minutes. So you've only got an attention span of 30 minutes. So I'm starting to err on the edge of your attention span for this actual assembly. Okay? So each of those squares, write down a subject you're going to revise for 30 minutes, build in a 15-minute break, and what will happen is after school, on one of those days, you'll do some revision. Make sure you cross out squares and boxes so that you're not revising every day. Because remember, we have to forget stuff to remember it better the second time. We have to forget stuff. So just trying to do everything day after day after day after day, you'll start to feel annoyed with yourself because it's not going in. Okay? As I mentioned, try and make it rewarding. Building gaps, avoid phones, try and make sure that you reward yourself. Get through this 30 minutes, I'm going to make myself a cup of tea. Get through this 30 minutes, I'm going to have a biscuit. Whatever it is, I still do that with my work upstairs. This is what I crucially do. Alex, I'll see you at the end, please, because this is directed at you. Make sure you make it obvious. Make sure you try and make it rewarding. Okay? And the biggest thing I often see are those things, where people try and write down all the stuff they've already learned again in a shorter form, more manageable form. That's good. Don't get me wrong, that's good, because you're trying to condense it down into just what you need to know. But the crucial thing is then to try, and on the flip side of those types of revision cards, I've got lots up in my office, if you ever want to get any, to try and pose questions on the reverse of those cards, so that you're doing something called retrieval practice. These are the 3 best ways of revising. The 3 best. They're quite posh things, and I'll basically sum them up in a couple of words what they mean. Retrieval practice is basically revising by doing. Revising by doing past paper questions. Certain subjects like maths lends itself really well to just practicing past paper questions. There's an excellent website called On Maths where it self-marks for you, where you can look at exam papers that might come up and it tests you as you go along. That's what's called retrieval practice. Spacing is basically whereby you make sure there's gaps in between your learning so you forget stuff and go back to it. Interleaving is this experiment where you're essentially trying to make sure you don't just focus on one subject. That's what they mean. And I'm going to send this to you later so you get a bit more idea of being able to read through those actual phrases of what they actually mean. Retrieval practice is the key one for me. It's where you actually practice something and you get things wrong. It's where you get the answers instantly. It's things like, in the bottom and the top there, those websites. BBC Bitesize. It's things like Seneca. It's things like On Maths. It's things like my revision website. I have built for you a revision website for you to go to that has all your subjects in one place and links to each of the places where you can go to revise. At the top, you go to subjects and you select your subjects and it tells you what to revise for those subjects. I've tried to make it easy for you. I've created a website for you, Year 11, to try and make it as easy as possible. I just need you to come on that journey with me. As I mentioned, the space practice is trying to avoid this that lads do, whereby you get to the cliff face. You get to the Sunday night, you try and cram, and what happens is you remember it, but the rate of decay is so bad that you forget lots of it the night after, the day after. Instead, trying to space it out through the week. That's uncool. Lots of the lads just want to go out, hang around with their mates in an evening, etc. They don't want to do that. But that's the thing that works. That's it. That's the whole truth. That's what works. It's been proven. Okay? So that's what you've got to do. The other strategy is something called interleaving that you actually do in English. Trying to avoid a particular revision strategy, revising all the things in one go. All Macbeth, all Inspector Calls. And instead, interleaving them, so you're doing a bit of Macbeth there, and a bit of Inspector Calls, and so on. And this is what they do great in English. Your English teachers do fantastic. Where they interleave things, so that you're having to then try and then make connections in your brain. And you're subconsciously, your brain's working harder in the background without you realising because you're doing that strategy. Last 2 minutes from me, and I've forewarned your Period 1 teachers that we will be a little bit late. For the mock exams that are coming up in November. We are planning them now, and you will receive an exam timetable, just like you had for the ones that with the exams that we did in the summer. Okay? They'll get reported home in December. These mock exams are important because they are the basis that you use for your college applications. They'll include a forecast grade. They will include your actual mock grade, and in the top right-hand corner, they will include your average grade of your best 8 subjects. And the reason why we're including that this year is because colleges often ask for it if you want to do A-levels. If you want to do A-levels, they often ask for a grade average of above 5 or 5.5. If you want to do 4 A-levels at a college or a sixth form, they often ask you to have a grade average above 6.5. Okay? I want to try and remember that, because that is something new that's going to happen this year that's actually quite important. You're going to need what we get out of these mock exams on your college applications. Okay? We can't make stuff up, we have to go on data. We have to go on things that you have earned in an exam period. As I said, we've designed the exam timetable, and it's going to be over 2 weeks, starting the 14th of November. And what we're doing for this time round is we're trying to interleave your subjects a bit. If you look at maths, we've got it the first day in the afternoon, but we haven't got it again to the Thursday morning later on that week, to allow you to interleave just like it will be in a real thing. Do not worry about trying to remember this, because this is still the draft version. It's gone out to the teachers to give us some ideas of what they like feedback-wise. But there's an awful lot of subjects that you'll see on there. Those subjects are the ones that would like a mock exam. They're the ones whereby you end up with an exam in the summer. So the things you can't see on there are things like drama, because it's a BTEC, and they're going to be doing coursework in there. You can't see art on there, because there's going to be an actual art day in December. There's a couple of things like iMedia that aren't on there. I haven't requested one, but all the others have. And the idea is to try and interleave those subjects to allow you most chance to practice. There's also a third week that includes clashes or catch-ups. If you look at this first week, you'll notice for food, I've put a little star beside it. The reason why we've got all those subjects in one block might be a bit weird, but that's when they have their double lesson, or the majority of students have their double lesson because of the shared curriculum. That's when German happens, that's when dance happens, that's when event operations happens, that's when the majority of food lessons happen. There'll be about, I think there's 5 of you in this room that do food and dance, or food and German, and you have a clash. And what happens is on that day, you would do your food exam, and then your clash subject would happen here, in the first clash session. If you're off in that fortnight, what is going to happen is we're going to give you a chance to catch up, and you will just catch them up in the order that you missed them. So say, for example, you have a day off, and you do music and further maths, and you miss those 2 lessons. What will happen is you'll do music and then further maths in your first opportunity catch-up sessions. That doesn't exist for the real thing. Last year, there were about 5 students who missed an exam and said, "Oh, when's the catch-up session?" And they hadn't listened to me. And I had to say to them, there is no catch-up session for the real GCSEs. If you're ill, and that's it. Which is why we need everyone in for the real GCSEs, even if you're poorly. Okay? Because there's no catch-up. There's no second chance. We want to put that second chance in there just because of the fact that it's important for your college applications and forecasts. Okay? I did this yesterday afternoon, but yesterday evening they did actually release the Summer 23 timetable. Okay? It's been drip-fed to us, but what we've found out is that there's going to be no pre-release information for the final GCSEs. They're moving back to more in line with 2019. The grade boundaries are going to be more like 2019. There's going to be no advanced information. There will be, though, formula sheets for science, maths and physics. Okay? There will be formula sheets in the real thing in the summer, so we're going to do that for the mock exams. I have put on no adaptations, but they did change that yesterday afternoon. Okay? The only good news about this, going back to what it's like in 2019, is it's the same for everyone. Okay? It's just one of those things we've just got to open up and kind of deal with it. And we've got to get on with it. It's the same for everyone. Okay? So, that brings me kind of towards the end. And I realise I've gone on for a little bit longer than I'd like, but it's really important this first assembly to try and set the tone. And unfortunately, for the majority of you, the one thing you'll end up remembering is my silly experiment. But the crucial thing is we can't let things slide. We've got to try and keep everything going. So I'd like you just to join with me in a moment's silence as I lead us in a prayer. Lord God, thank you for this opportunity to learn new skills and stretch our understanding. Thank you for guiding us through this time of study and into our exams. We lay before you all the hopes and fears we have about the outcome, and we ask for your support and guidance with our young people at every step and challenge that they face. Amen. Thank you ever so much for listening for a full 30 minutes, Year 11. I have already apologised to your teachers. Thank you once again. Can we lead out from the front both sides? Thank you.